the overall sense of a Tibetan temple is that it should look like a mountain, with a very strong base, and then become loftier higher up with the pagoda roof topping that. The first and main sort of governing principle is that of the mandala. Mandala in Tibetan and Buddhist philosophy is, you might say, a diagram of cosmic order. It represents the balance, harmony of the universe and of the relation of us human beings with the spiritual world. And maybe people are familiar with the idea of a mandala as a two-dimensional diagram, but actually it's a model of a three-dimensional structure, which is used in meditation for visualization purposes, visualizing this structure with all its symbolism relating to enlightened qualities. And I discovered that it's an amazingly beautiful way to build up the design of the temple accordingly, because in that way the temple itself will express all these qualities.
Lama Togmed, the Tibetan designer, regularly goes through and says, oh, this isn't right. Well, you've got 9 steps going up into it. You can't have 9 steps going into your temple. Happiness, joy, suffering, happiness, joy, suffering, happiness, joy, suffering. You'll end up on suffering as the last step, and you don't want to carry the suffering into the temple.
Every little detail has its own symbolic value and meaning. For the design of the temple from an architectural point of view, what is very interesting is discovered in Tibet that most temples, or actually all Tibetan temples, only have light from the top, which of course create a very, very spiritual atmosphere. So for me that was the main core, you might say, of the temple, to create such a structure that from the inside an atrium would be lighted from the top, which is then completely filled out, you might say, because in Tibetan temple design it's more like a complete unity. There's not so much a difference between structure and ornamentation. Ornament is sort of the main fabric of the temple, because it has all these meanings incorporated into it. I discovered that in Yorkshire there is a beautiful tradition of what's called Western architecture. Country houses, in the landscape gardens of these country houses there are even temples, and mainly as a step in between the work of Andrea Palladio, Italian Renaissance architect, and one of his main buildings that he designed is Villa Rotonda in Vicenza, which is a 4-side symmetrical, beautiful piece of classical architecture. And that directly relates back to the mandala with its 4-side symmetrical layout. So in that sense, there was a really beautiful mix or blending, you might say, that I discovered could take place in bringing the traditional Tibetan architecture and classical Western architecture together. As sort of an expression of that, for me, it became very logical to use local limestone to make this connection, not only through the symmetric, 4-side symmetric layout and proportions, but also in its material, to the local context, and it's blended into the environment. What you start with in sustainability is make a efficient main volume of a building, and luckily we here have a square building which actually has the best ratio of facade and cubic meters in relation to the floor plan. So in that sense, it's already a very efficient volume in terms of the energy properties. Also, a large part of the main facades have relatively small windows. Also, that is very good in terms of energy. So if we already make sure that the envelope of the building is well insulated, that's a very important part of the main setup in terms of sustainability. And if we then make sure that these materials themselves are also low embedded carbon, then I think, yeah, we're on a sort of a good way to develop that. There's a foundation already, because we started with the original design, I think 3 years ago, by pouring the foundations. Then when Chökyi Nyima Rinpoche visited and saw the foundations, he looked around and said, it has to be bigger.
A few years ago, I thought every year the student number is growing, so I need to be the brave. So I said we must make the temple more bigger.
So when Rinpoche said the temple needs to be bigger, we had no choice but to stop what we were doing and then get the permissions to make it bigger.
We're now in the phase of having the planning permission.
For a larger expanded temple, which now will hold 1,000 people, and that will be built on this site. It will be another 15 feet or 20 feet on all the sides around. There's 4 column areas, symbolic of where the old temple would have columns. When we build the new larger temple, there will be 16 columns inside the space. We'll be able to incorporate most of the work that's already been done here in the foundation will be incorporated into the new building.
2025, 26, 27, 28, completely finished. Completely. Everything, even garden.